Anastasia, and today I'm going to show you how to buy the correct size sewing pattern and how to read the back of the envelope and make sure you buy all the proper supplies so that way you can make the beautiful outfit that's on the outside of the sewing pattern envelope. I know you probably think buying a sewing pattern is so easy, but there's a lot of complicated stuff on the back of the pattern. And I know the first time I went to go buy a pattern, I was like, what are all these numbers and measurements and charts on the back of this? What's a nap, etc. So I would like to explain it to you so that way when you go and buy a pattern, you know exactly what's on the back of the pattern. So I love vintage patterns so much that I have a ginormous collection of them. And I've decided to start sharing them with you guys. So if you hop on over to my Patreon, you can check out my Vintage Pattern of the Month Club. Now let's start going over this pattern. The first thing you need to do before you go to the store to buy your pattern is take your measurements. So grab your measuring tape and let's take some measurements. These measurements are going to be very basic, just bust, waist, and hip measurements. The first measurement we're going to take is your bust measurement. So the bust measurement is going to be over the biggest part of your bust. Now overlap it a little bit, and wherever the end of your measuring tape comes to is what it is. So we're gonna go 34¼ for the bust measurement. Next, we're gonna measure your waist. If you don't know where your natural waist is, put your hand on your hip and tip to the side like a teacup. And where it indents is where your natural waist is. And that's where we want to put the measuring tape. So now when we go over and make sure it's not too tight and not too loose, we're gonna measure. Mine says 26½. Now make sure you're writing down these measurements that you're taking of yourself because you're gonna have to find them on the chart on the back of the pattern. Now for our last measurement, it's going to be our hips. The hips is gonna be the widest part of your body down below. For some people it's up higher, some people it's lower. Really depends on your body shape. You wanna measure the biggest part so that way you buy the proper size pattern. So now mine says 36. So I'm gonna write down 36. Now let's go look at the chart on the back of the pattern. And what do we do if our measurements are all over the place in different columns for different sizes? Your size chart is gonna be on the back of your envelope. For the butterick pattern, it's gonna be on the flap. Wherever it is, it's gonna be somewhere on the back of the pattern. So let's go ahead and take a look at our size chart. So here's our size chart. You can see it says bust, waist, and hips. So you want to go over to where your bust measurement is on the chart. Mine was 34, so I circled that there. Then we're going to go over to the waist, and you're going to find your waist on the chart. 26½, that's close, so right there. And we go to the hip, and we come over and find our hip measurement, and we circle it. So I fell right under size 12. But if you have measurements that are, let's say, you're a 40 bust, and you're a 28 waist, and you're a 40 hip. So now, what size do you buy? So it's really gonna depend on the style of garment that you're sewing. So this dress has an open hip because it has a flared skirt. So your hip measurement is kind of null and void. So you're really concerned with your bust and your waist measurement. And you wanna go with the one that's bigger. So if you have a bigger bust, go with the bigger size. If you had a bigger waist, go with the bigger size for the bigger waist. Now, if you had a pencil skirt, you would want to go with the measurement that was for your hips. You want to go with the bigger size because you can always tailor down the garment. We can always take in the fabric and cut it away, but we can't really add fabric and make the garment bigger. Well, we can, but it might not look as nice. So we want to go with the bigger measurements so that way we can always tailor it to ourselves. Now that you know your size, make sure that the pattern envelope you grab has that size on the front of it. If it does not have your size on the front of it, you need to search and find the envelope that does. One thing to remember when you're buying a pattern is that you're not buying the size of dress you wear in the store. So if I wear a size 2 or 4 in the store, I'm not buying a size 2 or 4 pattern to sew from. I'm actually buying a size 12. Now that you know what size to buy, what is all of this other information on the back? Well, let me tell you. So the first thing on the pattern is going to be the style number of the dress. This is the style number in the catalog. This is how you find the pattern. Next up is going to be a description of the dress. So this is Mrs. Dress and Belt. Pullover dress has collar, optional shoulder pads, fitted bodice, pockets with ties, side zipper, and self belt. What does self belt mean? Self belt means that there's going to be a belt made out of the same fabric as the dress. Combinations means that this pattern was printed in 2 different size runs. So A5 is 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and E5 is 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. It's also going to recommend fabrics to use for this particular garment. It's recommending linen, taffeta, piqué, fail, and brocade. And it's saying it's unsuitable for obvious diagonals. Now I say break all the fashion rules and sew this garment up out of any fabric you want. Try it out. Who knows? Maybe it'll be amazing out of a fabric that it doesn't recommend. So now it recommends these fabrics because of the tailoring and the drape of the garment. It feels that these are going to be the best suitable fabrics for this garment that they've designed. But it doesn't mean it's the only fabrics you can use. So next it says star with nap, 2 stars without nap. So nap is the direction of the fabric. It's the pile of the fabric. So now you'll notice that the widths of the fabric say 45, 1 star / 2 stars, and then it's giving you the recommended amount to buy. So it's saying that it can have nap or no nap, and it's accounted for this when you buy the amount of fabric that you need. And so now let's go down to where it does say dress and belt, and then what is 45 and what is 60. So these are the widths of the fabric. If you take your fabric bolt and you turn it to the end, it's going to say how wide your fabric is. So now if I was using 45-inch wide fabric, I would come all the way over to where the 12 is, and now I know that I need to buy 3 yards and 3/4 of a yard of fabric. And if I was buying 60-inch wide fabric, I would only need 2 yards and 3/4 of a yard. Now why do I need less fabric? It's because the fabric is wider and I'm placing my patterns differently when I lay it out. So fabric isn't the only thing you're going to need to sew up your garment. You're probably going to need some interfacing and notions. And what are notions? Well, notions could be zippers, buttons, hook and eyes, hem tape, etc. And it's going to list what you need for your garment to complete it fully on the back of the pattern. So next, it's recommending that we buy sew-in interfacing. 18 inches wide or 20 inches wide, we're going to need 1 yard of it. Now be careful because interfacing also comes in fusible, but this one's recommending that it's sew-in, so make sure the end of your bolt says sew-in interfacing. Now next is going to be those notions. So it's recommending a 12-inch zipper, a 1-inch buckle without a prong. It's also giving you options here for design, so you could purchase covered shoulder pads and seam binding. Another word for seam binding is bias binding. So if you're at the fabric counter and you ask for bias binding, they'll be able to tell you right where it is. Next, this pattern is giving you the finished garment measurements from the back length from the base of the neck. Now why it doesn't have a bust or waist measurement is beyond me, but we're gonna go over here and I'm gonna show you where that's at. Back length from base of neck means you're gonna start at the back neckline and you're gonna go all the way down to the hemline. And when you measure here, this is going to give you the finished measurement of back length from base of neck. And that is how you figure out what size pattern to buy and what all of that nonsense is on the back of the pattern. Hopefully, it makes sense now and you can go buy all these fabulous patterns. Thanks so much for watching Sew Anastasia today. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. And as always, follow me on Instagram at Sew Anastasia and Anastasia Chatzka. And make sure you pop on over to Patreon so you can check out my Pattern of the Month Club and all the other awesome ways you can support Sew Anastasia and keep it growing. And if you're in Chicago, make sure you take a sewing class with me. You can sign up at sewanastasia.com. And if you'd love something custom made, well, I'd love to make you something custom. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!